So the last few months have been extremely busy with the release of Line 6 Helix firmware 3.15, the release of Line 6 Metallurgy. Amplitude 5 just received a great update that added the new ToneNet preset sharing community. So there's been no shortage of videos to do to cover all of these, and it made me realize I haven't sat back and done just a fun video based around the music I enjoy and that I grew up with. So today I wanted to do a My Top 5. I haven't done one of these videos in a while, and I'm going to do my top 5 favorite classic metal albums. These were albums that were hugely influential on me when I was growing up in my formative years, learning how to play guitar and learning everything I know about music. These albums really influenced me in the rock metal side of my playing. Now, a lot of folks don't know when I did start playing guitar at 10 years old, I was really focused more on the jazz side of things. I was a huge Al Di Meola fan. I love John McLaughlin. I love flamenco guitar, Paco de Lucia, and I was turned on to that through Al Di Meola, and I was really, really into those styles of music. And, you know, I liked rock, but I didn't really listen to it. I was the strange 10-year-old who didn't, but all my buddies listened to metal. And a lot of the albums that I'm going to mention today, I got turned on to right around that time, shortly after I started playing guitar. And I never looked back. I still love the jazz stuff. I still do to this day. And I'm so glad I cut my teeth on some of that stuff because I learned so much from those influences that I had. But boy, am I glad I turned into listening to some of these classic metal albums. So enough blathering on about that. Let's dive right in with number 5. Queensryche's Operation Mindcrime album. This came out in 1988. I was 14. This really turned me on my head. And I know a lot of folks might say that, well, this isn't really a classic metal album. It's almost more of a prog concept album. And that is true. The reason I put it in here, I was really juggling back and forth between whether I should make number 5 here, Rage for Order by Queensryche, which has actually become a bigger favorite of mine than this album, but this was my first introduction to the band. So I feel like I have to start here. What did I love about this album? Well, what wasn't there to love? I loved the fact that there was a story throughout it, but Michael Wilton and Chris DeGarmo's twin guitar lines, their harmonies, their dual rhythm parts, and Jeff Tate's vocals. I mean, just amazing, melodic, perfect. Absolutely love this. A good friend of mine, Norm, if I'm remembering correctly, had the VHS version of, I think it was called Operation Live Crime. I think I must have borrowed that off him 100 times and watched that so many times. And I just absolutely fell in love with the band. But having said that, Rage for Order for me now is an album I can go back to over and over again. I just love everything about that early Queensryche stuff. I also enjoy their later, more recent stuff as well. Definitely one of my top favorite metal bands of all time. Coming in at number 4 is the amazing Ronnie James Dio with his band Dio, the Holy Diver album. This is an album that I just kind of stumbled upon because friends of mine were listening to it. And to be quite honest with you, I didn't even know who Ronnie James Dio was. I had no idea that he had this other band called Rainbow. I had no clue about any of this. This album came out in '83. I was 9 years old. I probably didn't even start listening to it probably till more like '85ish. So I was late to the game, as I was with some of the other albums I'm going to talk about on here. But I was more blown away. And the reason I listened to it mostly because of Vivian Campbell's amazing guitar playing on it. I became a huge Vivian Campbell fan. And through being attracted to the guitar riffs and solos on that album, then that turned me on to the incredible Ronnie James Dio. And then I started digging through his back catalog and listening to a lot of the stuff he did previous. And now those early Rainbow albums to me are just spectacular. I can put those on at any moment and absolutely enjoy listening to those. So that's what's really cool about a lot of these albums back then when I was listening to them. I was discovering these people that I maybe didn't know much about, and then I'd go into their back catalog and have my mind blown that there was just so much great music out there that I didn't even realize existed. Fast forward to 1986 when I was 12 years old and Master of Puppets, Metallica's classic album, was released. This album really made some jaws hit the floor. And again, I wasn't really familiar with Metallica's previous albums such as Kill 'Em All or Ride the Lightning. It just wasn't where my mind was. And at this age I was at, like I said, I was more interested in a lot of the jazz stuff. But when I first heard that first opening riff to Battery and also to Master of Puppets, I mean, how could you not just wake up and take notice? Now, I got to be honest, I was never a huge fan of Kirk Hammett's playing. He was not really a huge influence on my guitar playing. I might get some flack for saying this, but I listened to Metallica and Master of Puppets despite Kirk Hammett. I never looked forward to the guitar solos, and that's so unlike any of the other albums that's on this list or other albums I listened to. A lot of times I was really looking forward to the guitar solos, and just on Metallica albums, I was just never a fan of Kirk Hammett until there was some beautiful melodic solos, and then, you know, I come to find out later that a lot of those were played by James Hetfield. So I was probably more of a James Hetfield fan than a Kirk Hammett fan, but again, nothing against Kirk. He's a fine player. He just wasn't my cup of tea, I should say, as far as a lead player goes. But there's no denying that Master of Puppets was just an earth-shattering record. And I absolutely love that album from front to back. And that was a huge influence on me musically. Now, these next two are very special to me. So coming in at number 2 is Iron Maiden's Number of the Beast. As I mentioned, I was a real closet jazz head. You know, it wasn't the cool thing to come to school and talk about your new Al Di Meola records you got when all your buddies were kind of metal heads, right? So I had good friends that I was, you know, basically in class with every day at school, and they'd be wearing Iron Maiden t-shirts and, you know, the amazing artwork with Eddie on it. And, you know, I would always be so taken by this, but I never really listened to the music. So some friends of mine would always be listening to this, and, you know, this album became a huge influence on me. And one big thing up here, being a Canadian boy, we had Much Music. We didn't have MTV, and there was Much Music's Power Hour back in the day. And I remember looking forward to watching Power Hour, and I would get to see these videos, and it was just life-changing at that point, being like a 10, 11, 12-year-old kid watching these really cool videos. It just changed my whole way of thinking about music, and it was such an exciting time to be listening to this. But Number of the Beast, Run to the Hills, 22 Acacia Avenue, what a killer album front to back. This is still an album I put on very regularly and listen to it front to back and just get nothing but enjoyment out of it. Adrian Smith and Dave Murray's harmony guitar parts, it's legendary stuff. Bruce Dickinson's incredible vocals, the scream on the Number of the Beast title track is just incredible stuff. And that definitely could have even been my number 1 on this list. I really went back and forth which one I should put at number 1 and which one I should put at number 2, but I decided to go with Iron Maiden, Number of the Beast at number 2, but keep in mind it probably is a tie for number 1, really. So here we have it, the number 1 on my top 5 classic metal albums, and that's Judas Priest Screaming for Vengeance. I think this may be one of the finest heavy metal records ever made. The songwriting is incredible. Rob Halford's vocals, incredible like usual. Glenn Tipton, KK Downing, I mean, just fabulous work throughout this album. To me, this almost sounds a bit like a greatest hits album. Every song is amazing. Electric Eye, You've Got Another Thing Coming. I mean, it just goes on and on. Just, You've Got Another Thing Coming. I remember when that would come on anywhere I was, I would just stop and listen to that song. And it always just blew my mind. It was such a huge influence on me, again, in those formative years when I was 10, 11, 12 years old. I just can't say enough good things about that album, and it definitely is at least tied for my top spot with Number of the Beast. But I had to give it the edge, as it really is a favorite of mine. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed that. I just wanted to do a fun video, nothing to do with tweaking tones or anything today, just talking a little bit about some of the influences I had growing up. I hope you enjoyed seeing some clips of a non-bearded me playing through some of the solos and riffs from these classic albums. I kind of took those from videos I used to have up on my channel when I used to do a lot of cover material. It was kind of fun to dig through the archives and see those videos again and realize how different I looked. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed that. It was just a real fun little look. And please, in the comments, leave me below the albums that were really influential for you, your top metal albums that you grew up with that kind of changed your world. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I hope that was enjoyable. Please like the video, share it with anybody who you think would get some enjoyment out of watching it. And please subscribe to the channel, hit the little bell notification to get notified when I put new content out. I will be back really soon with some more. Thank you guys again so much for tuning in. Ciao for now.